Week 10 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few wide receivers I looked at on the wire this week. The first guy, Terrace Marshall of the Carolina Panthers. I mentioned him last week as an ad on the waiver wire, and he's still out there in tons of fantasy leagues, and 94% of leagues here is Marshall. So the last few games, he's been putting up numbers and getting more snaps and playing a majority of the snaps as well. Week 7 versus Tampa, 2 catches, 31 yards. Week 8, Atlanta, 4 catches, 87 yards on 9 targets. And Week 9 at Cincinnati, I know a lot of garbage time in that one. 3 catches, 53 yards, and found the end zone. So Week 10, another good matchup versus the Falcons, where he came off that 12.5-point fantasy day. And right now, P.J. Walker's still the starter for Thursday's night ball game. And him and Walker have the good rapport. So right now, if you need a wide receiver with the bye weeks or injuries or whatever the case may be, he's definitely one of the top targets to go out there and get this week. The next guy, McCole Hardman of the Kansas City Chiefs. So Hardman, he's been getting on a roll of late here and finally maybe figuring things out with this Chief offense. 4 games in a row now with double-digit fantasy points in PPR leagues. The last few weeks here for him, Week 6 versus Buffalo, 3 catches, 42 yards, a touchdown. Week 7 at San Francisco, 28 rushing yards on 2 carries, 2 touchdowns, 4 catches, 32 yards, and a touchdown. And then Week 9 versus Tennessee, a monster game again. 6 catches, 79 yards, and a touchdown on 9 targets. So Hardman right now surprisingly out there in 52% of fantasy leagues. He's a gadget guy, he's a speed guy, and he's turning into the type of weapon that this Chief team was hoping. And that would obviously he'll trade in the offseason to the Dolphins. He's starting to take a little bit of that role, is Hardman, and he's a good get this week. The next guy, DeAndre Carter of the Los Angeles Chargers. So Carter, he put in a decent ball game. Not a great game in PPR leagues. 5 catches, 53 yards in an expanded role Week 9 at Atlanta. So right now, Keenan Allen, that hamstring is still a problem for him. We don't know when he's going to come back. He's Keenan Allen. And right here, DeAndre Carter, we know he's more of a slot guy than anything, but with all the injuries on that offense, him and Joshua Palmer were the number 1 and 2 receivers in that ball game. So the last few games here for Carter, Week 7 versus Seattle, 3 catches, 37 yards. And Week 9 at Atlanta, 5 catches, 52 yards. So right here, San Francisco, middle of the pack matchup, where he's probably going to have the expanded role. I don't know if Keenan Allen is going to play another down this season. He came back in the Week 7 game where they rushed him, I believe, was his Charger team. And then he re-aggravated the hamstring. So right now, we don't know when he's coming back. And Carter right now available in tons of fantasy leagues at 69%. He's a receiver to get this week. The next wide receiver is Wan'Dale Robinson of the New York Giants. A few weeks ago, I mentioned him as an ad. And in the last couple games, he hasn't done much as Robinson. But right now, available in tons of fantasy leagues. 75% of leagues here is Robinson. So the last few weeks here for him, since the return from injury, Week 6 versus Baltimore, 3 catches, 37 yards, a touchdown. Week 7 at Jacksonville, 6 catches, 50 yards. And then Week 8 at Seattle, he didn't do much in that one. 2 catches, 15 yards. So right now, this Giant team, they didn't go out there and trade for a wide receiver at the deadline, which definitely could be a mistake if they want to continue to be in a team that's going to contend here. They don't really have a number 1 wide receiver. But right now, Robinson could be that guy. And like I said, he's available in tons of fantasy leagues. So with a decent matchup versus the Houston Texans here as a flex option or a third receiver in 3 receiver leagues, he's a guy to go out there and get this week. In the 5th and final wide receiver is George Pickens of the Pittsburgh Steelers. So right now, George Pickens, I know he's not available in tons of fantasy leagues. He's only out there in 45%. And now with Claypool out of town, traded to the Bears at the deadline, it opens up that number 2 wide receiver spot and tons of snaps and targets for Pickens. So Pickens, a lot of preseason hype, and rightfully so. And we've even seen some decent flashes from him during the regular season. Week 4, a big game, 6 catches, 102 yards versus the Jets. Week 5 at Buffalo, 6 catches, 83 yards. Then Week 6, a down game versus Tampa Bay. Then Week 7 at Miami, 6 catches, 61 yards, a touchdown. Week 8 at Philly, a goose egg. And now coming off the bye week and with Claypool out of town, from here on out, he could be a flex option or even a number 2 wide receiver as Pickens. A lot of games they're going to be trailing. He's got big playability, and he's a guy who will go out there and get in the waiver wire in 10 and 12 team leagues if he's still out there. So that's a few waivers I've looked to add here on the waiver wire for Week 10 of the fantasy football season.